Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
And you can hear us?
Yes, I can. Good evening.
Good evening. We are ready to go whenever you're ready.
Awesome, thank you. All right, everybody, welcome to the December 19th meeting for the Land Use and Waterfront Committee. My name is Majid Abdul Samad, and I am chair of the committee. Tonight, we're joined by Assistant District Manager Brendan Berth. The meeting is called to order at 6:31. As a reminder, New York State law now requires all committee members who are not able to attend the meeting in person to have their cameras and their first and last names displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the time the meeting is adjourned. Members of the public who are attending virtually, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. Members of the public who are here in person, you can raise any questions that you have by raising your hand. If there's time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. We need a volunteer to take meeting minutes today, if anybody is able.
Victoria.
You are perfect. Thank you so much. So Victoria will take minutes, Brendan.
Yes.
We'll now take attendance by roll call. Brendan will conduct the roll.
Committee members, I will call your name. When your name is called, please say present. I will announce if there is quorum. Majid Abdul Samad.
Present.
Victoria Benatar.
Present.
Jim Collins.
Here.
John DeRico.
Present.
Sandy McKee.
Present.
Rich Mintz.
Present.
Larry Shire.
Present.
Sandro Sherrod.
Present.
Letty Simon. I don't hear Letty and I don't see Letty at the moment. So she is not here. Susan Steinberg,
Present.
Gabe Terzo,
Present.
and Brian Van Nieuwenhoven.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Awesome. All right, the agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and is reflected on the screen before you. If there's no objection, we will adopt the agenda. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand. All right.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead,
I
Jim.
do have I do have an objection to the public hearing aspect, simply because this is not a regularly scheduled meeting of the Land Use Committee. I think it's inappropriate that we have a public hearing.
Is that because we've changed the date for the
Yes,
meeting?
yes.
Jim, this is a time-sensitive issue, which we must resolve before February 2nd if we want to have an opinion. And we need to have a resolution from our committee to present to full board. We have only a 60-day time period.
I understand. I just, for the record, I object to the consideration tonight. But I understand your time pressure and I understand the exigencies. But I don't believe that we should carry on public hearings on irregular meeting basis. Not to be a troublemaker, but that's just my view, man.
Noted. Go ahead, Brendan.
And let's
Just
proceed.
Just to clarify the reason.
Just note the objection. Just note the objection and proceed.
It's
Yeah.
noted, yeah.
I'll just also note that the reason it's irregular is because the fourth Monday of December is Christmas Day. So.
Right.
just-
No, I know. I know.
A legal holiday.
Perfect. So noted. And actually, since this is a public hearing, we're making a quick adjustment to the agenda to start with the public hearing. Stephen being in the room will present on behalf of DCP. So with that, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. All right, the minutes from our last meeting, November 27th, were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there are no objections, we will adopt minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the minutes, please raise your hand. Seeing no objection,
Just one
Oh, sorry.
quick correction, on the second page, it starts with a blank line, a copy of the presentation may be found at, and it's just a blank line. It doesn't actually
yes.
have the link.
that's when we need to update the,
So
yes,
that
thank you
needs to
for
be
that.
updated before we.
Before the line, yeah. Thank you for that. All right, if there are no other comments on the meeting minutes, those are also adopted and will be soon available on the CB6 website once that correction is made. All right, quick ground rules. You all know this. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, we'll observe the following. No one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members who are here in person, if you have questions about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand and I'll identify you so you can speak. Committee members unable to attend in person, if you have a question about committee business, you may raise your hand through Zoom and I'll identify you to speak. All committee members, is extremely important that one person speaks at a time so that committee can, so members of the public watching at home can understand what is being said by each committee member. The chat function on Zoom should not be used for committee business or questions about the agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used for technical alerts about technical difficulties or stating information in writing, like an email address that was already stated for the record. With that, right, we are starting with the public hearing. And that's a presentation on the proposed citywide zoning text amendment that would allow gaming facilities in certain commercial and manufacturing districts, only if licensed by the State Gaming Commission. The public hearing, this public hearing would, this part. So public hearing is now open. If any member of the public want to speak on this matter and are here in person, please raise your hand. If any members of the public who want to speak on this are here on Zoom, please raise your hand through Zoom or indicate your written statements or questions in the Q&A. You will have up to 3 minutes to speak. Remember that before you begin speaking, please state your name and your affiliation. We'll start with the presentation, then come back to comments. So with that, Steve.
Great. Thank you so much. My name is Stephen Johnson. I'm with the Department of City Planning. And if I'm blocking anybody from the screen, I can move around. I'm sorry if that's happening. I haven't presented in front of Committee Ward 6 for about 10 years. So it's great that I get to do it again. I did it, I think, for the Manhattan Core Parking text amendment. It was at one of the hospitals, one of those huge theaters. It was a really crazy place, but it's great to be here. So I'm just going to start in with the presentation. This is our first slide. So the department is proposing a citywide zoning text amendment to allow gaming facilities as a use into the zoning resolution to use group 8 in certain commercial districts and manufacturing districts. So it's commercial districts C4, C5, C6, C7, and C8, and it's manufacturing 1, 2, and 3. And that's just to get the use into the zoning resolution, because currently there is no permitted gaming, casino, racetrack use in the zoning resolution, so it's not a permitted use. So what is a gaming facility? So we're following the state's definition of a gaming facility, which is the premises approved under a state gaming license, which includes a gaming area and any other non-gaming structure related to the gaming use, and may include things like hotels, restaurants, and amenities. So a gaming facility is a broader term, includes these associated uses. Most of these facilities, like a casino, will have like a hotel or a theater or restaurants associated with it. This doesn't mean they have to have any of those things if there's a proposal for one, but it does include those if they wanted to. So it's a broader term. So the text amendment, the purpose of the text amendment is to facilitate the development and operation of up to 3 gaming facilities in New York City as approved and licensed by the recently state-defined process, which they announced in earlier this year, which created a whole new process, which I'll walk through in a second. And the proposed text would then, if it's approved, would deem the gaming facility allowed under the zoning resolution. Do I need to point it?
Brendan, it's not advancing for him.
It's not advancing?
It was working earlier. I saw it. So anyway, what started, can you do it? So this whole, thank you, perfect. Julie's here. So this all started in January 2023 when the state announced a request for proposals to develop and create a gaming facility. And what happened back in 2013, the state, there was a statewide referendum. The New York State voters approved 7 commercial licensed casinos in the state. Subsequently, 4 of them have been awarded upstate, so those are an operation upstate, which left 3. So at the beginning of the year, the commission created through the Gaming Facility Location Board, which is the group that oversees these. They made this announcement in January 2023, and you can go on their website. They have a bunch of documents, and there's a bunch of questions and answers, a lot of information on their process. And they said, we're gonna open this up to the downstate region, which includes New York City, Long Island, Rockland, Westchester, and Putnam counties. And as I said, it's not a permitted use in New York City. So, what we decided to do at city planning was create this text amendment, which would create the use. It doesn't approve anything. It just allows that use in the city for the first time. And in this document, the developed to operate gaming facility have this new community advisory committee process, which I'll also get to in a second. On the next slide, but in New York City, sorry, can you go back to? So there is one racetrack and lottery, video lottery machines in the city, and that's at Aqueduct Resorts World. It's allowed to be there because it's on state property, and the state controls that property. That's why they're allowed to be there, even though it's not a permitted use. Some of us may remember OTB sites. There's 6 existing regional corporations around the state. The one in New York City went bankrupt and closed in 2010, I think. I go to the next slide, please. So this slide shows the what New York State Gaming Commission controls, the different sites around the state. They have a section called Indian Gaming, which is their term, 7 different facilities. And then a couple of the different other facilities are around the state. We're most interested, of course, being in New York City, in this area here. You can see the 1 and the 1, that's Aqueduct and Resorts World. That's existing. Number 2 is the Belmont in Elmont, that's Long Island. That's got a thoroughbred horse race track facility. Suffolk has their own existing, I think it's video lottery. Jake's 58 Casino Hotel, it's a hotel. Yeah, it's video lottery. Those mainly mean there's no live people other than at the automated machines. So it's not how I typically think of a gaming facility, but that's all that's permitted. And then 5 is the Yonkers racetrack, which is the green one, Empire City Casino. So these are the ones that are around the state and what's been permitted. Can I get to the next slide? Okay, great. So, so the initial review process of these facilities that's outlined in their documents is the Community Advisory Committee. So this would have 6 members it's a little bit difficult because I have to discuss the state's proposal, even though I don't work for the state, but they're the ones who set the rules for this, right? So the text amendment is what we're doing in the city so that everybody can consider in their neighborhoods if they want these. But this is the state's process that I'm outlining here. So there's 6 members who will be reviewing each of these applications. I'll show you where these are located on a map pretty soon, but there's 6 members: the governor, mayor, senator, your local senator, assembly member, the VP Levine, and Keith Powers. I think the assembly member is Epstein, and I think your senator is coming at town hall on January 11th to discuss that, to get more input from y'all, which I think personally is a great idea, because then you really get to see what's going on and how she feels about this. So they hold these up. So if there's a proposal in your neighborhood, and you do have one, there'll be open meetings. They'll have open a public hearing on it. You can review, give them comments, and then they'll vote on it. Whatever the development is, whatever consists of the envelope of the building, the use, the bulk, all the details. And then if it's approved by a 2/3 majority, then that application then goes to the State Gaming Facilities Location Board. Now, there are currently 9 proposals in the city. If none of them get approval by their own individual CACs, none of them go to the Gaming Facilities Location Board. If they all get approved, the gaming facilities location board can get all 9 applications if they're approved. But if they're not approved by the CAC, they don't get any. They'll just get the ones maybe in Long Island or Yonkers, wherever they are. So that's all they're reviewing. And the way they review the applications is mainly cited around these 4 issues: economic activity. There's when they did the 4 ones upstate, they talked about job generation, economic activity, lowering your property taxes, those types of things. And then they have these other things that are factors like the local siting impact that's related to environmental review, workforce enhancement, and diversity framework. So, and then if you have questions specifically for the state, you can see it on your website. Kristen Buckley, there's a phone number, email, you can ask them questions. You could actually say, I mean, I can't answer for them, but you could send them to me also. And I can try to, if I know the answer, I can give you the answer. So that's a resource for you guys to look into. And they're going to be coming out, the timing of this, one of the issues that we're dealing with at the city is that the timing is not totally transparent at the moment. So they released the second round of responses to questions. There was a first round a few months ago. Another round of questions came in, and when they released that second round of questions, which we at the city are anticipating first quarter of next year, there'll be 30 days for the applicants to take their applications into their CAC. So that's gonna start the entire process of this, but we don't have the framework of when that's gonna happen. We're just assuming it's gonna be in the first quarter. It could be later in the year too. Could I get the next slide, please? Thank you. So the text amendment. So the purpose of the text amendment is to follow what was enacted by the state legislature in relation to the 3 licenses and only the 3 licenses. So the text amendment is proposing to add the gaming facility use group 8. It's an entertainment use into the zoning resolution and any associated uses with that in relationship to the proposal. And this would allow New York City to be considered as a possible location for one of these facilities and whatever they're proposing, just for the consideration of it. It's in C4 through C8, M1 and 2, M3, and it's limited. The point that I want to get across is that it's limited to the 3 licenses. So if there's a new state referendum in 5-10 years and the state, New York State voters approve another round of licenses, this text amendment would not work for those. We'd have to do an entire, if New York City was then interested in those, possibly going into New York City, the city would have to do another text amendment. These are tied to the 3 from this referendum. So there's only 3 maximum in the downstate area. And then we included the issue of how they define gaming facilities, including the related uses. And then, as I said, it'll be deemed as having satisfied all applicable regulations in the zoning resolution. So the CACs are going to be reviewing the building height, the bulk, the use, and we're assuming they're going to be, reviewing those in relationship to the existing zoning, right? So Midtown Manhattan, the height limits, for example, are pretty open, but in other areas of the city, in other boroughs, if they're proposing an 900-foot hotel, good luck with that. Because the CAC would then review that, right? And then they'll vote on whether or not they think that's a good idea. Could I get the next slide? Thank you. So I think I already touched on a couple of these. It doesn't apply to any future gaming licenses. It's only related to the ones that have already been approved. It has to be approved by 2/3 vote by the Community Advisory Committee. And then it goes to the Gaming Facilities Location Board. And like I said, if they have 9 applications, they're only approving 3. If they have, so they're reviewing whatever they can get, they're reviewing. Then one issue that I'm going to be touching on here is that the gaming facility must be compliant with local zoning and regulations. That is in the document that the state released because the Gaming Facilities Location Board does not want to review applications that are not compliant with zoning. Because then they can approve a license and then the community would say, well, if then they review it and then it's like, well, you can't do it, we don't approve it. So we're trying to get this part out of the way as soon as possible. And the CACs would be reviewing. And the text amendment does not apply to any future modifications. This is important because hypothetically, if a gaming facility is approved and they're like, we have one 500-foot building, tall building, a tower, 2 towers, and then we have a 500 space parking garage. It's approved by CAC, it's approved by the Gaming Facilities Location Board, they're golden. Then 10 years down the road, they're like, oh, we want to build another hotel on the site, we want more parking. You can't do it. It's whatever was approved by the CAC. They would then have to come back and go through ULURP for any of those types of modifications. Next slide, please. So here we have the locations of the 9 proposals. You can see there's 2 in Community District 4, 2 in Midtown 5, and number 5 is over here at Freedom Plaza, as you are all aware of. There's one in Freedom Point, Ferry Point Plaza with the golf course. That's 7 is Willits, 8 is the existing aqueduct, and then there's 1 at Coney Island. Now, the one issue I want to raise here is that the zoning text amendment is designed to permit whatever is approved by the CACs. And that pertains, at the moment, it pertains to 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then 8, because it's on state property. But 6, 7, 9, and 1, we have actions outside of the zoning text amendment. The obvious ones to discuss are the ones that are on parkland, because it's easy to see how those are affected. It's in a park, so they have to alienate the parkland, get that approval. There's no zoning district, so then they have to map a zoning district, build something there, and they have to change some of the roads that are coming in and out of those sites, because they're gonna be have impacts with cars driving into the area. So, you know, right now they can't take the cars that are being proposed for those sites. So those actions are currently just getting started at city planning. And those projects are all going through ULURP. So those communities will have their own ULURP process in addition to this text amendment. So that's how their process is working. And I think one way to look at this text amendment is that it doesn't approve any facility, it just allows the use. And whatever license is approved by the state is deemed applicable with the zoning resolution if it's approved by the CAC and the Gaming Facilities Location Board. And I think one way that the communities can look at this is you can look at it more in more black and white terms, which a lot of people do, which is totally fine. I don't like gaming. No, I like gaming, yes. But there's also all that in between, like maybe you want a facility in your neighborhood and you don't think they should be out by the airport, or just the opposite. It should be out by the airport. It should be out in a park area where there's more open space. You know, so it's like, do you want the city to be able to consider one? And what's the location? Maybe you want it in your community, but you don't want it at the location that's proposed. You know, there's different variables for this that you can consider. And then I think it's the last slide. So can you give me one more, please? So just to summarize, it's just in C4 through C8, M1, 2, 3, it's limited to the 3 licenses, and that community advisory has to approve it. Everyone has to approve it ahead of time, and that it only applies to a gaming facility license approved by the state during this particular legislative approved process that has already been completed. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. All right, go ahead, Susan.
What would be the economic benefits to the city?
So the economic benefits would be that people would be coming into the city to tourist money would be coming in, tourist dollars. People will be coming and spending money in the city. I don't have a breakdown of how money is divvied up from the proceeds, but I can tell you that the initial in the application, they talk about how right off the bat, if you get the license, then you have to invest $500 million into the development in addition to other things. So I think the idea is that I'll be generating economic opportunities, it'll bringing in money to the city. or at least that's their argument.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Victoria.
Yeah. Is there any reason why they're all located around Midtown, East and West?
No, those are just where the development sites are. So two of the buildings are existing. One's at Saks, it's an existing building, and the 1515 Broadway, it's an SL Green building. Those are existing, so if you look at it in terms of impacts, those are already existing. So those would potentially have fewer impacts, so some people might find that beneficial. But other people might be like, well, why don't we get some other development with it? Maybe we should have other features going with it. So I mean, there's pros and cons to each type of facility that they're proposing. And the smaller ones, I mean, we've heard the discussions. You know, some of the politicians are like, we want a James Bond Casino Royale, you know, high-end casino, which would have fewer impacts. I don't know if that brings in, I don't know what the economic difference is for the city is for that, but that would be a smaller footprint and different, and a particular clientele for that.
Because I am in agreement with Susan's question. It's very important to know what is the economic benefit to all of this to the city to be able to agree or not with the proposal. Is there a study or some kind of?
I don't know if the state has done a study on the economic impacts and how successful those first four are. I mean, that's a good question. That's something I could look into if there is any information on that, but the state would have, they release annual reports about what's generated from those new casinos. I guess it probably also has all the other facilities that they have too, that are outlining how much money is generated and what the money goes to, and property taxes are reduced, those types of things.
And I have another question. The 500 millions is to be invested on the development, or the fact that they are investing these 500 millions, the developers, they should use it to other locations to impact positively areas around the developments, you know, like, or areas
Yeah.
in need, or.
It's focused on the development itself. It's outlined in their proposal in the state's request for applications. So I recommend going through that, but it is focused on that,
Only,
each particular development, yeah.
okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm just gonna take actually a comment from George, and then we can come back to committee members. Go ahead, George. I think you should be able to unmute.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So Stephen, can we talk a little bit about environmental impacts? The environmental assessment for City of Yes economic opportunity included the casinos in its environmental assessment. However, there was no, these things can be of a limited size and, can have no open space and waives essentially all zoning rules other than, the very limited rules that are a part of it. And so how is the city going to be able to make a decision regarding something like this without understanding the adverse environmental impacts that this could create?
Sure, so the process for the text amendment that I'm here for, as you noted, the text amendment was originally in the economic opportunity project that you've been looking at, probably because it's so in-depth and there's so much in there. But it was removed from that because I think the city felt there's just too much going on in that one project, so they took it out and the sequester just went off. But it's true, it was analyzed in the economic opportunity project. So the idea here, and then it's a conceptual analysis, right? For the text related to the text amendment. Now, all these 9 proposals would be evaluated by the state under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And they have site-specific requirements and review and impacts for each one of those. So with their application, as I mentioned, which would be due after the second round of questions is released, responses to the questions is released. They haven't handed in any applications yet, so we don't know, but we think that there's gonna be a lot of already completed environmental impact items in those, and then when they work their way through the process, they have to go through the state's environmental process. So basically the the response is the state will do the environmental review for each project, site specific to whatever the proposal is.
Okay, and so this decision is not being, I mean, essentially it's not being made with the disclosure of adverse environmental impacts. It's something that's being kicked down the road to the state process. Is that right?
So the text amendment was reviewed as a conceptual analysis in the economic opportunity project, in that environmental analysis.
Okay, I mean, but if you read it, there's no reasonable worst case development scenario. There are no sites that are identified. It's like, it basically says it's going to be evaluated during the state process. And I'm bringing this up just for the, you know, for the chair, and shut me up if you think I'm going on too long here. It says that generally speaking, you're not allowed to do this, right? If you're making a decision, you're not allowed to kick down the decision down the road. And if you look at the environmental assessment, it really is just a box ticking exercise. There's no reasonable worst case development scenario. There's no massings. There's no nothing on it, and it's just very unusual the way that this is structured. And considering that each application must have local zoning approval, that's a requirement. The fact that local zoning approval is being given without the actual disclosure of environmental impacts is just unusual. And I'm not a lawyer, but you know, I do know that it is unusual.
So that would be reviewed under the CAC process with those applications, those proposals for facilities. And then the local council member, Keith Powers, will do it along with the other members of the CAC.
Thank you. Solid question.
Well, it's more in the way of a comment. This is a very awkward and clumsy way of amending the zoning resolution. The first paragraph on the slide here is promising. It proposes a new use group, and it limits the applicability of the use group to certain types of zoning districts, which is consistent with how the zoning resolution has been since day one. But beyond that, it just starts to go up a whole series of dead ends and blind alleys, ending with, well, if this works out in the future, you can't do any more of this. You're going to have to go through this whole process all over again. And that just doesn't make any sense. It's quite inefficient.
So this is not verbatim what it says in the text.
No, I
That's just
recognize that, yes.
paraphrased. And we wanted to put an end, we didn't want to leave it open for, you know, somebody proposing a gaming facility, you know, in some other area in the city. We wanted to kind of keep things as narrow as possible. So we didn't want to leave it open to proposals down the road.
Right. So Rich, then Jim, you're after.
Okay, I just, for my own clarification, I just want to make sure I understand that if someone makes a proposal in one of these districts, these commercial or manufacturing districts, and the CAC passes it on, it is deemed approved by right if the state commission approves it.
That's right.
Which means that all of the burden falls on the CAC to do all of the evaluation necessary that would happen in an entire ULURP process.
That's correct.
Okay.
And we, as the city partner, and the mayor has a seat on the board, and we work with the council member all the time.
Yeah.
And the VP all the time, and we brief the VP. So we work with these groups, these people a lot, and we're not saying, okay, you know, if this passes, we're not like, okay, we're done.
Yeah.
We still want to be participating in this.
So the mayor's seat would in effect be where the representative of DCP would weigh in.
Yeah.
From a sort of an administrative organizational perspective. Okay, that's it, thank you.
Go ahead, Jim, then Gabe. We can't hear you, Jim, if you're speaking. You're on mute.
I'm just asking the gentleman that's making the presentation whether he's DCP or EDC. I presume
City
he's
plan.
DCP.
Yeah, city planning.
Okay. I just want to observe, and as a follow-up to my original objection when we took the agenda, these things always seem to come up at the last minute when they are least likely to be observed. I've served on this committee for 25 years. All right, and between EDC and occasionally DCP, they always come up the last meeting of before we go on our summer hiatus. There's always time pressure, and there's never an opportunity to fully vet what is being considered. So I just want to voice that objection and hope you will take it back to your superior. Thank you.
I will, and I don't have superiors, but I have equals. And I just want to say, we get this, we're well aware, we get this for every project that comes around the holidays and at the summertime. And sometimes it just can't be avoided. But I understand what you're saying, and I agree that it can be difficult to, like the regular scheduled days on Christmas. Totally understand that. But in addition to that, I want to say city planning is pretty flexible in getting your resolutions in. Like, we don't say, okay, if you don't give it to us on the 3rd, you guys are out of luck. We're like, okay, get it to us when you can, and better before the public hearing so the commissioners can see it. That's pretty much kind of how we deal with it.
No, go ahead, Gabe.
First of all, I want to thank you for coming here to the Lions Den here. Is DCP aware of this being done successfully in other cities? What I mean is, outside of Vegas and the city, urban casinos, to my understanding, have failed to deliver on the promised economic benefits. Are we aware of an example to the contrary?
I am not. I have not studied gaming facilities or casinos in other cities, but I do know that they are there. And like Chicago, for example, they have facilities, but of course, a lot of those then direct people to go to Los Angeles. But I'm not saying this is a good thing, but gambling is increasing, especially in relationship to sports. And so there's a lot of interest in it.
Thank you. If there are no other comments from the committee members, Sam, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, my name is Sam Cuckley. I'm representing the condominium board from Corinthian Condominium, which is 864 units. I personally have been part of the real estate business for 50 years. I'm an MAI, I'm a counsel of real estate, and I'm a fellow in the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors. So I have great credentials. My last job was 22 years in risk management for one of the biggest, or the biggest pension fund real estate investor, TIAA Crep. Have some understanding, and my focus has always been in New York, and I understand some. So what I'm here to say is I'm concerned about the text of the amendment, and that it has certain provisions in it that consider certain things. For example, public safety. Now, why do I come in with public safety? Because I look at one of the sites, and it's in an area where it's very heavily trafficked now. And if you add another 1,500 parking spaces, all of a sudden, the two major hospitals right in the area are going to be it's going to be impossible for emergency ambulances and services to get in to advise them. How that can, we can't have, where we allow certain things to happen if there's nothing in the text that help. And this area may be a commercial, this site may be a commercial site, but it's really, in the context is really a residential district. I understand that this used to be an industrial district. I know that, but it's changed from when the Coca-Cola plant was on 34th and First to my site, which was the west side, the east side airlines terminal building. I got it, but it's changed. And I think that from a residential use perspective, this is an inappropriate use of the site for a lot of reasons, especially traffic and other, it's just, and I think that there should be in the text something that addresses, you know, these concerns. Certain sites, like you mentioned, sites in Midtown, they're different, you know, and
Absolutely.
this is different. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you so
I
much.
hope you would consider that.
Thank you.
So
Appreciate it.
can I respond to that? So the idea would be the CAC would, okay, say that a proposal has a 5,000 space parking garage. Say this text amendment passes and there's proposals that are put forth and somebody wants a 5,000 space parking garage in Midtown Manhattan. I mean, I can't guarantee it, but I would imagine most people would be like, in the CAC would be like, why do you want, it's not, there's safety impacts, there's traffic impacts, there's congestion, no 5,000 space parking garage. So that would be where those issues are addressed. And it would also be, going back to George James's point, is that that would have to be analyzed by the state in the environmental review related to transportation.
But
Traffic
even, but, yeah, but you raise a good point. But the point is, so let's say they go from 1,500 to 1,000 to 700,
Yeah.
but people are gonna come, if it's a successful place, it's gonna generate a huge amount of traffic. I mean, it's not like going to a transient hotel or whatever. And I think as for a residential district, I think that that's, you know, a consideration. And I think, you know, those types of things should probably be as part of the zoning, you know, that, you know, the text of the zoning. Because you look at other areas and they would qualify in a better way. So that's what I want to say.
Thank you.
Okay?
Go ahead, Brendan.
I should just quickly note that, two attendees online have had their hands raised and have been promoted to panelists, Julie Lubin and Gail Tauber, so make sure to get to them at some point.
Okay, actually, let's do that now in the interest of time. Gail, do you want to go ahead? You can unmute and start speaking. We can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm not anybody. I'm just, I've just lived in this neighborhood for 40 years. And I'm a volunteer at some of the parks around here where we keep up the green that the Parks Department doesn't get paid enough to do. And I'm agreeing with all the disagreeing that's going on about this proposed casino. In fact, Friends of Ralph Bunche Park got together a petition that's been circulating. I actually sent one to this committee, but I don't know if you saw it. And it's to vote no on this proposed casino, especially in this neighborhood. And I think all of the points that you've brought up about traffic, for one, first of all, nobody's mentioning the United Nations. We have a world headquarters of the United Nations that is 1 block away, aside from a playground that would be right next door to this proposed facility. And even thinking about something like the 1 to 2 weeks that the General Assembly is in session and the roads are all closed off around there, is mind-boggling to think that you're going to have a casino and traffic, an underground garage supposedly, or a garage who is going to oversee this garage in terms of, how do I put this? You know, I don't want to have to use the word terrorist, but that's what, you know, that's what goes on around the UN at that time with sharpshooters, and people were worried about terrorism. Who's going to oversee that? So that hit me as one thing. Langone's emergency room, which was just mentioned, is 1 block away. I actually spoke to Langone. They were supposed to take this up. I don't know if they have. They were aghast at the idea of a casino. They also have a drug program there. And I just want to get, I want to make one small point too, just about casinos in general, and that is casinos make money off the backs of workers and working class and low income individuals for the most part. And I know they may envision a James Bond casino here, but that's sort of a joke. And so I think that's a very important point to take into account for all the people you may give jobs to. My brother is a labor lawyer, and he said, yeah, it's the Friday paycheck goes to the lottery and gambling. You know, it's a good way to lose your income. It breaks up families. I could go on and on because I've been reading up on stuff I don't want to have to read up about. So my time's up, I guess. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Gail. We appreciate it. I'll just note that the committee had previously in the full board passed a resolution opposing development of a casino. That was March 8th of this year. So with that, unless there are other comments.
Wait, there's another one.
Yeah.
I believe they lowered their hands.
Oh.
Are they still there, Brendan?
You're talking about Julie?
Yeah, I don't see a hand.
Yeah,
Okay,
Julie is here.
okay, go ahead, Julie.
You should be able to
Hi,
unmute.
everyone. Hi, Stephen. I wanted to find out why city planning included language saying that if the state approves the project, it's deemed to be improved with local zoning. I don't understand why that's necessary. You said previously that if the state would require compliance with zoning. So my question is that proposal in the zoning text superfluous, or is there something in zoning that is not going to be complied with upon the state approval? Because otherwise that provision doesn't make sense to me. I guess my other question is, you know, the argument in favor is that this is not duplicating ULURP, but I think that if there were a special permit coming from the city for this use, the city council could impose conditions on it. And it's not clear to me that under the state process that the city has any ability to impose conditions related to any of the things that, for example, Gail just said. I didn't hear what the community board previously considered when it voted on a resolution earlier. But there are things that were mentioned, such as parking, traffic, particularly the hospital uses, and honestly, just to be fair, just residents being able to get home to their apartments, that I think will be really impacted by a large facility. And again, we have no idea how large, we have no idea how many uses. So I'm expressing reluctance to take this out of the ULURP process, which is really the gold standard since 1989 of a land use process that gets community input, gets borough president input, has a city council vote. And I understand who's on the advisory committee, and I can see that, but I think that there's a tried and true procedure here. And while we have some uncertainty about zoning and the ability to impose conditions, to protect, the interests of the community, environmental, any interests that, the zoning resolution would normally allow to be protected, which I've been away from it for a while, but I think it's listed in, stated in Article 7. I would really love it for city planning to get back to the community board about these issues. Thank you so much.
Brilliant.
All right, thank you very much. I see one more hand raised.
Yeah, Heather Dewey raised her hand.
Hi, yes, this is Heather Dewey Hagborg. I had a few points and also just some confusion. So I I guess I am not really clear on how this decision is democratically being made. So whose decision is this text amendment? How do we vote on it, or to which representatives do we direct our opposition? So that's kind of question number one. The next question is about the CAC. It doesn't really look like anyone listed on that slide anyway would really be from our local community, representing our community. So calling it a community seems like a bit of a misnomer. And then I just want to add to the things that other people have already said, and I know that the community board has voted against the casino project, but just to reiterate that time and again, numerous studies have shown that casinos do not boost the local economy, that they do negatively impact property values and community safety. And all of the neighbors that I've talked to in CB6 about this project are vastly against it. And again, clearly the home of the UM, this prestigious global site of enormously high security, is not compatible with any kind of gambling district. And beyond that, the property owner of that lot, the Soloviev property owner, doesn't even maintain their property the way it is now. The sidewalks are crumbling apart. It's totally inaccessible. You can't push a wheelchair down the sidewalk, and it's flooded like a huge lake. It's not even properly drained. So is this really the person that we want to trust with such a high security project? So those questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, go ahead,
Yeah, I am building on a lot of things other people have said. I completely agree. I feel like we're being asked to bypass our really valuable process. Slow, but this is a long-term process, so like maybe it's reasonable to be slow, with not even a promised benefit, never mind any kind of guarantees. I remember when we did basically the variance for One Vanderbilt, it was like, you don't get a certificate of occupancy until the infrastructure work is completed. And there's just none of that here. And so, that's a concern, particularly given, I think it's right, the history is not that there is a great record of, it's like Olympic stadium, right? It's stated, it doesn't, like there's always promises, but it doesn't really give back to the community. The last thing I would say, and I don't know if anybody, this question actually, when I came by this site the other day, there were a bunch of big white tents in it. And I was on a bus and I asked the bus driver, like, oh, how long have those been up? And he said, I don't know, but there was a big party there again, like a few hundred people. So I don't know if anybody knows what.
So we can take this up if you want in old and new business, since it's not related to the zoning.
Well, okay.
Go ahead, Susan.
I just want to make one comment. The city is facing such challenges, homelessness, thousands of migrants, people who can't afford their homes. We need a lot of affordable housing. And I just think I don't want to say in bad taste, but I will say almost in bad taste that the city is considering a casino when we have so many other really critical infrastructure issues that we're facing. Okay, I said my piece.
I'd like to make a motion that we as a committee have an unfavorable stance towards this text amendment.
Seconded.
Okay. Well, the public hearing on the proposed citywide zoning text amendment that would allow gaming facilities in certain commercial and manufacturing districts, only licensed by the state, is now closed. And we can move to a vote by roll call. Brendan will take the roll call.
Yes, when I call your name, please say whether you are in favor, opposed, abstain, or abstain for cause. Majed Abdul Samad.
In favor.
Victoria Benatar.
I'm going to abstain at the moment.
Jim Collins.
Oppose. I'm sorry, in favor of the objection, excuse me.
John DeRico.
In favor.
Sandy McKee.
In favor.
Rich Mintz.
In favor.
Larry Shire.
In favor.
Sandra Sherrod.
In favor.
Letty Simon. Yeah, you're muted. Letty.
Muted.
In favor.
Thank you.
Susan Steinberg,
In favor.
Gabe Turzo,
In favor.
and Brian Van Nieuwenhoven.
In favor.
With 11 in favor, no opposed, and 1 abstention, the resolution passes.
Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, Stephen, again for coming, presenting to us. We appreciate it.
Sure.
So you can.
Clarify the resolution. I don't think
The
everybody.
presentation was good.
understood.
Answer all your questions. I can answer more if you want.
So to clarify, the resolution we just voted on was opposing the proposed gaming facility text amendment.
Right. That,
And that was just.
yeah, that's what I came to discuss, not the specific.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Right,
you.
with that,
I'll leave.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank
You're welcome
you.
to
Thank
stick
you.
around, but thank you
Thank
again
you
for coming.
for all your hard work. More interested in all the good things that you do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, with that, moving on to the next item. Thank you, George, for waiting. This is continued discussion of the proposed city of Yes for economic opportunity. Proposal for citywide zoning text amendment by the Department of City Planning. So with that, George, I had already shared with George some of the notes we had since last time we talked about it. He had some more details to share and a memo that was circulated to the whole committee. So George, we don't have to go through the memo in detail, knowing that folks have seen it, but we're very curious for your take, especially on the outstanding issues that we highlighted from our last meeting.
That would be great. Would it be possible for me to share my screen? Good. I have permission. Let me just do that and share. Okay.
Mr. Chair, just on information, we didn't assign anybody to write the opposition memo or the opposition.
I already wrote a draft when we.
Oh, you
were-
did? Okay, fine.
So
Okay.
that's, yeah.
Fine.
So we're good to go.
We will carefully consider and draft something.
Yes, yes.
Well, actually, we not distributed, but don't we need to?
There's enough.
Go ahead, Brandon.
So yeah, just to clarify, like, given that, well, first of all, there's a time sensitivity, but also given that there's a presentation on this, I figured it would have made sense for the committee to hear the presentation and then the committee decide. So that combination of factors.
Well, we don't have to see the draft and wait them out.
It's just an opposition. There's.
So we oppose.
Yeah, it's just opposing.
The other thing is that the bylaws do give some flexibility in terms of time sensitivity, and given the clock has already started and that it cannot be voted on, it cannot be voted on until February's full board, it is time sensitive.
All right, go ahead, George, back to you.
Okay, so these are the lists of questions that I got, and we're gonna just go through this list of questions. You can feel free to stop me, interrupt me. This is for you. This is to answer your questions. So the first one is upper floor commercial uses. How does this impact residential uses? And this is actually the most complicated of them all, because it varies by zoning district. So, so the rules are they're going to allow for upper floor commercial uses, and the rules depend on what the zoning district is. So in lower density C1 and C2 districts, so I'm thinking right now First Avenue in your district, most of First Avenue in your district. Commercial uses are limited to the ground floor and the cellar and not permitted on the second floor. And the neighborhood commercial FAR is 2. And so what this means is that if you're limited to the first floor and you can't go to the second floor, you'll always underbuild your commercial FAR because you have no place to put it. And so what that means is that to build out the site, you need to have residential or perhaps community facility, but it's normally residential instead. So by allowing for second floor commercial use, that second floor commercial use would displace housing that would otherwise be built to build out the site. So in the lower density commercial districts, which is most of the city, this is a bad proposal for housing. because essentially you're giving people the option to replace housing with commercial uses. Now in higher density commercial districts, so think Second and Third Avenue in most of your district that are paired with C1 and C2, you're already allowed to go on the second floor in those higher density districts. And ultimately, we don't see a lot of it. And personally, I did the survey in my own neighborhood, which has this sort of, has this building here. And 22% of the buildings surveyed, we did a little bit more than 100, had second floor commercial uses. 50% of the newer buildings did, so there seemed to be a trend towards second floor commercial uses. But you know, you could already do it already, and essentially this is very near neutral for the higher density districts, the change that they're proposing. Then finally, in the C4 through C6 districts, the higher intensity commercial, where you're going to allow for commercial throughout the building, above residential, alongside residential. We already permit commercial in higher floors above the second floor in the C4 through C6. And you just have to layer them with the residential above the commercial. And in this case, it's not exactly clear if this is good or bad for housing, because you could, in a very high density district, you know, do a mixed building like the one that you see on the left here. This is hypothetical, but where you have essentially residential wrapping the commercial, so you could take advantage of the windows you have and have separate cores for them. So in some cases, if you have a very deep lot, it actually might be good for housing. So you could actually, you know, there could be situations where it is good. So this is, again, a more neutral thing, but I think generally speaking, allowing commercial in the upper floors of buildings is certainly bad in the lower density districts, and in the higher density districts, it's unclear for housing. Topic 7 was urban agriculture and the effects of it. Yep.
George, sorry to interrupt. Can we take questions on those one at a time, just so we rule them out?
Absolutely, please do.
And sorry.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, this isn't something that we've actually clarified our position on. If maybe we can say we think it shouldn't happen in C1 and C2 districts, but we agree with the change elsewhere. Is that something maybe as a committee we could?
So that would be a conditional favorable.
And Misha, maybe you just want to explain how we.
Right. So just so everybody knows, we got, and I forwarded this to you, Brenda, if you want to put it up, the sheet that DCP is asking us to weigh in on each of the amendments, the 18 ones.
Drew is still presenting, so, well, actually, his presentation is off, so I will.
So we will be voting in the following categories: no objection, favorable, conditional favorable, unfavorable, conditional unfavorable, or waive comment. I'm suggesting that we simply say we either are favorable or conditional unfavorable, in which we explain why are we not in support of it. So we just simplify into these two on each one of those, and there's room for us to explain. Go ahead.
Can you pull up the last slide? I think it was topic 5.
Oh, let me turn off my screen share and let George.
Yeah.
Sorry,
The one that showed this shows an unusual kind of massing. And it occurs to me, and maybe for the first time, that this hits upon a solution to one of the biggest problems for converting mid-century office buildings to residential use. And that is that the interiors of those spaces are not suited, as they were open office plans, to residences. Here, you mentioned that the exterior windows, which you would want for housing, could be preserved for that purpose, and the interior spaces could be devoted to quite a bit of commercial use, which could help fund the functioning of the building, and maybe help pay for the conversion. This had never occurred to me, and maybe we could make some sort of a comment, whether it's a negative resolution or positive resolution. I'm not sure which way we should go overall, but I think we could contribute something by highlighting this as something that the city should focus on going forward.
Got it. Any other comments on this? Go ahead.
Could we agree to comment on this particular section? But I just wonder if we shouldn't do this as we move through, otherwise there are 18.
I agree, but I think we should just make a note of the things we want to comment on.
So we, in C1 and C, what I'm proposing is unfavorable, this aspect is unfavorable in C1 and C2 districts, but favorable in others.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, with
Do we
the,
have, do we have to vote on each one?
That's the question.
Sandy,
I will
with
suggest-
the, do we want to include something to the effect that we think housing is a priority that needs to be stressed across all of the,
All of these,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And
In
to
that
underline
context.
why, I mean.
Yeah.
Right, in that context, yes.
Right, so go ahead, Gabe, but what I will suggest is that we can compile all those in a single resolution. And I'm making notes of the ones that the committee does not have comments on versus the ones that we had take issues. And after folks can suggest amendments to ones that they disagree with.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I strongly agree that housing is obviously a huge priority. I don't believe that pitting housing against commercial uses is ultimately the way to do that. In economics, we have the lump of labor fallacy. I think if we view this as bad for housing, we're falling into the lump of real estate fallacy. The way to get more housing is not to make it harder to do commercial things. And in fact, I think second floor commercial uses could be vibrant and good for these neighborhoods and should not, I think, be written off on the grounds that they're quote unquote bad for housing.
And just to note, it's not just second floor.
Yeah.
It's right, it's above residential and it could be on the same as residential. So it's a little more nuanced too.
Victoria, you had a comment? You had your hand.
No, well, Brandon already did it, he moved the,
Yeah,
Okay.
because we couldn't see the.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jim, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to ensure that we vote for each section of the issues that George had described in his memorandum, which was very good and informative, separately. That we not take this as some kind of omnibus.
Got it. So just
Any kind of omnibus position on the whole thing.
so what I'm suggesting, just so we don't take 18 votes tonight, are you okay with us compiling in a single resolution? And then as I make note of the discussion here, you can suggest changes or amendments to lines you disagree with whereases that you disagree with? Does that make sense?
My view is, I think we're better off. I mean, I assume everybody's read the memo. I would prefer that we judge each one on its own. George, what's your feeling on this since you wrote the memo?
Oh, I think it's entirely up to you in terms of how you want. I've seen every board has been doing this differently, so I think it's entirely however you want to run your meeting.
All right, go ahead, Sam.
Can we do it through show of hands?
yeah, it can be done through show of hands. I mean,
Let's quickly do a show of
the final
hands.
vote on the resolution should be done by roll call, but I think beyond that, it's okay to have a show of hands for the individual ones.
Okay,
The topics.
the topics, right?
Perfect. Go ahead.
How will this kind of sync with the matrix that you showed us? Will that be part of the resolution?
Our resolution explains a little more in detail, and then we have to fill the matrix and submit it. There are some requirements for how to submit this,
Okay.
but this is just for the interest of getting community input. With that, should we do a show of hands vote?
Just, Mr. Chair, on the schedule that you showed a little earlier, there were two columns and each of the items were listed. And you said that we could modify that so that it said we had recommendations. And that's what I'm basically suggesting, that we follow that format. And it doesn't, if you want to do 3 votes at a time and reduce it to 6 items, that's fine. But I just think each one of these items that George has described is a separate issue. And I think they deserve our consideration and separate vote. And, you know, we're,
Jim, I think we're actually all in agreement. I think it's just a procedural thing of whether we want to do a formal vote for each topic. So I think what I'm hearing, at least in the room, is that we're going to go through George's topic comments and comment on those specifically, but we're also going to have a formal vote on the entire resolution. So I think we're doing what you want, actually.
But are we going to do a show of hands for
So we
the,
do a show of hands, just so we know whether we're supporting or not supporting. So,
Sure.
for example, for
Yeah.
5, I'm gonna suggest that in show of hands, who is in favor of opposing this conditionally, given, and in the conditions we explained what the issue is.
opposing this topic 5.
Yes, opposing.
Conditional opposition.
conditional opposition? Okay,
Right.
here we go.
Conditionally opposing it.
So this is conditional opposition for number 5.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
It passes.
It passes, yeah.
Yeah, you got it.
17 to go.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm scared. Let's go for George's list. It's a little shorter.
Okay, George,
Okay.
back to you.
Okay, all right, so number 7 was urban agriculture. So currently, agricultural uses are allowed in any district if they are open and unenclosed. All right, the change permits enclosed agricultural uses anywhere, including residential districts, as long as it does not create offensive odors and dust. And that's it in terms of, negative effects. So one of the things is cannabis cultivation would qualify as agriculture. And so these prepackaged cannabis grow rooms would be permitted in any district along with vertical farms. And the new zoning permits the sale of goods grown on site, as long as it's not shipped in from other locations. So in terms of the question was negative effects in terms of mold and rats. There are no performance standards. It's just deals with offensive odors and dust. That's it.
No, go ahead, Sandy.
My feeling is the market is going to settle this for us, that residential is just way more lucrative than even cannabis growing. So I have no problem with this one, actually.
Go there.
I would conditionally oppose it because offensive odors and dust is not complete enough. George, you mentioned mold. There are drainage issues. You also mentioned rats and vermin. Those should be added as part of our conditional objection as additional items that should be specified. It be permitted so long as it does not create offensive odors, dust, mold, drainage issues, and vermin.
Yeah, I will say that the list of, essentially environmental concerns is really short on this one. And a lot of times noise is one that's often in there, along with glare and vibrations and other things. And this one has just very few, which is odd.
Plants are very quiet.
That's a good question. When they say agriculture, are they also maybe including fish farms so that you'd have a ton of water in these things?
Jim, that's a really good question. I don't know. I would have to look into that.
That's interesting. Whether we're talking about herb-based agriculture versus things that
It's not
animal husbandry.
agriculture isn't just vegetation.
That's a very important distinction.
It is. It's a very important distinction. I'm sorry, I can't answer it. I have to look into it, and we can get clarification from DCP on that. Or that could be a comment that you also make.
Well, I think that we should add that our conditional objection is focused on only permitting plant-based agriculture, and the provided that it doesn't create these problems, and we're opposed to any other form.
Farm-raised salmon from 23rd Street.
So actually, can I ask, if we oppose this, does that mean we can still, this could still be a ULURP action, someone who wants to do this can still come through community board and just demonstrate that they've handled the whole odor and dust and safety issues and still build it? Is that accurate?
No. No.
We're just removing the.
It would be as of right.
So if we're opposed to it, that does not mean it doesn't happen, it's just no longer as of right, they have to do ULURP. Is that correct?
Get a variance.
Or a variance, yes.
Or a variance.
It's circuitous, kind of a path, though. I don't think anyone's gonna do that.
Right.
Yeah. There to grow salmon.
Right. Whatever they're growing. Do you grow salmon? You raise salmon? Okay.
Is there a motion for a show of hand vote on this?
And what will we be voting for, against, what's?
Conditional disapproval.
What about conditional approval?
Two motions.
Same thing.
So how we're doing this, either we are supporting in the current state, just for the sake of that sheet, or we say not in its current state, and that's the condition.
I don't really care. Conditional approval, provided that the approval is limited to plant-based agriculture and the offensive odors or dust, also be a larger category to include mold, drainage problems, and
Vermin.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor? Raise your hands.
Is it a conditional favorable? Conditional
Conditional
unconditional?
favorable. Conditional favorable.
Yeah, it passes.
Okay.
So conditional favorable for number
For,
seven.
against, no against.
Conditional opposed.
Conditional favorable.
Okay, topic 8.
Okay, topic 8 was life science research laboratories. And the question here is, what about the safety of these facilities? So City of Yes changes research laboratories to use group 7, and it would permit them in all Manhattan commercial districts. Only labs that have no danger of fire, explosion, or offensive noise, vibration, smoke, or other particulate matter, odious matter, heat, humidity, glare, other objectionable effects. If you have that, you've got to get a special permit. Now, prior to 2016, most labs were limited to M districts. The Alexandria Center here got a special permit to be located in a C6 district. There is still a special permit for labs. They're getting rid of the one that exists now because you don't need it because it can go basically anywhere. But there's still one to put labs in residential districts as long as it's part of a campus, like what are these, like Memorial Sloan Kettering. Now, zoning doesn't address risks of lab leaks, and that's what the question was about. And after enumerating many lab accidents that have occurred, the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene wrote the following in 2016. And if you permit me, I'll read it because I think it's important. As serious as these incidents have been, of even greater concern have been laboratory incidents over the past decades that have caused outbreaks of contagious virus diseases, including smallpox, SARS, and foot and mouth disease. The department is concerned that an accident in a New York City-based high containment research laboratory could have catastrophic consequences, given the population density of nearly 70,000 people per square mile in Manhattan and the many other areas of high population density throughout the city. And again, this is from a New York City document from the Department of Health. Now, zoning does nothing to address risks of accidents, right? And these facilities. Yep.
George, what year did that document actually get released? Do you know?
Yeah, 2016.
2016, okay, thank you.
Yeah, 2016, and there's a link to it. You could read it yourself. I encourage you to. anybody who has these concerns to read the lists of accidents the Department of Health has enumerated in that. It's actually frightening. Okay, so these facilities are very highly regulated. That's what the city says when it brings up these concerns, but accidents still occur. The Department of Health now requires these facilities to register with the city because of the risks of accidents. And that list that the Department of Health collects is secret. It's not subject to FOIL because to release the names and addresses of these facilities would constitute an untenable security risk. All of this is being done without any EIS, even though state environmental law requires reasonably foreseeable catastrophic impacts must be acknowledged and identified in an EIS. The discussion should include description of areas, populations, or resources potentially affected, a general discussion of the likelihood of that catastrophic impact, and a discussion of alternatives, mitigation measures intended to prevent such catastrophic impacts. This is from the Seeker Handbook. So this has never been studied in EIS. There is no plans to complete such a study. And really, you know, I don't have any expertise here, people. I'm just an urban planner that does zoning and land use. I do find it concerning that the city is not speaking with a single voice on this. And you're hearing one thing from this agency over there and another thing. You know, EDC says that this is strategically important. We should put it everywhere. I don't know what the right answer is. And I don't think anybody really does. I think the question is an important question to consider. But you know, I don't have any other answers other than this information I presented.
Got it. Go ahead, Larry and Sandy.
We have a fire department that does inspections, things like explosions. You have a school which has a chemistry lab, and you can have a class in which the teacher is demonstrating how you can have hydrogen and bring it in your oxygen, create water, but you can also create an explosion. So this has happened, and I don't think that what we're doing here is necessarily going to solve that particular kind of a problem. Safety and how safety is regulated, I don't think is part of the zoning.
Go ahead, Sandy.
And George, could you go back to exactly what this proposal does then?
Sure. So this proposal is essentially allowing life science research laboratories in every commercial district. And it's a change because before 2016, they were only permitted in manufacturing zones. They were permitted in no commercial districts. And then there was an interpretation which allowed them in some commercial districts or with a special permit in C6 districts. And now it's just like they're permitted everywhere.
Got it. Go ahead, Jim, then Susan. Jim, if you're speaking, you're on mute.
Me? Okay, I thought you said Laurie first. I would move that we disapprove and state the Department of Health memorandum as the basis.
Second, I was gonna make a motion.
Disagree.
There's the man who works at NYU.
It's in a residential neighborhood. I mean, if they want to have them on a campus, fine. Campuses can deal with it much better. They can evacuate. But, you know, they have these labs. There was a lab in California that was engaged in, nobody knew it was even there. And it was engaged in high risk research for you know, what is it, containment vehicles, high, I forget the exact term, but it's they were very risky. There were lots of pathogens and what have you. So, you know, I think we should oppose it outright in residential districts.
So I was just gonna say, No, I was just called on, Jim. I was just responding. So I think that we should be clear, basic science is a wide category. And not all things are dangerous in basic science, right? This is just laboratory space where potentially new classes of drugs are explored and sickle cell anemia and other things are addressed, not pathogens that are highly contagious or are highly virulent. So I think we absolutely should put something in there if we're concerned about that, but just I want to fear monger a little less. It's not just the basic science is a bad and dangerous thing to have. That's actually really important for
It
us.
says life sciences, not basic sciences.
Yes, related, but yes.
So to that point, I agree, but since this is a zoning use, unfortunately, it's a really big umbrella that covers everything.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brian.
What I was gonna say is regarding to what Sandra was just saying, if we can find terminology that is appropriately inclusive of the sort of safe facilities that we don't have a problem with, and we can specify that in what we're passing tonight, then we can do that and say like it's sort of a conditional disapproval, sort of deny unless kind of thing. If we can't do that, we kind of got to go into this just saying, hey, there's this isn't being presented to us in a way that we feel confident with it, because there's a lot of people feeling like they don't really know exactly what kind of laboratories are going to be done here.
Right.
So then, George, and let me ask your hand as well. But just so we are clear, are we correct in saying that the zoning code itself does not distinguish levels of operation within life science umbrella? Is that correct? Like, can we say life science 1, 2, and not 3, 4, or is it?
Yeah, no, it really doesn't. I mean, it's really about explosion or noise or vibration. It doesn't have to do with like pathogens, right? I mean, it's not part of it. And so what they did with the blood center is very clear that they believed that what they call biocontainment laboratories of different levels would all be research laboratories of use group 7, allowable everywhere. It's just that ones that are production, that are producing things or have risk of explosion, those would be the ones that would be there. That's how we segregate it right now. And those production labs and ones that have risk of explosion would have to go into M zones or get a special permit.
We need more detail.
We could just add pathogens potentially.
There are biosafety.
Sorry, actually, go ahead, Letty.
No, it's okay. I'm listening. My question was answered. I don't have to ask it. Thank you.
Okay, you have follow?
There are existing very strict regulations under National Institutes for Health, Centers for Disease Control, which supervise and monitor any permitted use that you're fearful of. So I think maybe making reference to that the activities be supervised by the appropriate governmental agencies such as National Institutes of Health or CDC could be able to go forward, but not otherwise.
Got it. Okay, so now that we had a little more discussion on it, Susan and Jim, do you want to maybe rephrase your motion to acknowledge that detail and the unfavorability?
Conditional objection, you mean? Instead of
Conditional
outright.
pull out the
Conditional, yeah. Conditional objection and banning pathogens, and particularly high containment labs.
Yeah, I can
think is the term.
Yep.
The problem is that you're talking NYU or Sloan Kettering or any of these other outfits that are going to handle this stuff responsibly. But what do you do with the guy that's running a lab and just doing it commercially and doesn't really care about the safety? I mean, if you're tied to
Okay, actually,
What's that?
So
Can
you,
I
that's
interrupt?
running a lab.
Can I
that's,
interrupt
like,
for
These are
the-
regulated, right?
yeah,
It's not
Okay.
land use
They are-
regulations.
Yeah, but
Right.
so was the one in California. So was the one in California theoretically that was dealing with pathogens, and nobody knew it was even there.
All right, we have a
okay.
motion.
Should we do
motion.
a vote by show of hands, Brennan?
And it's a conditional unfavorable.
Conditional unfavorable, requiring addition of measures, to address the safety and security concerns and differentiating, the types of, labs.
So if you're in
Second.
favor, conditional unfavorable, raise your hand. So I count 1, 2, 3.
It passes. Brenda.
Yeah, it
Perfect. All right, George, back to you.
Okay, amusements. Somebody said this does not include casinos. Yes, it does not include casinos. We don't have to go over this. You just talked about this. You know what this is about.
Great.
Okay, 14, micro distribution facilities. The question was, how will local businesses be protected from excessive micro distribution facilities and acquisition by larger vendors and operators? So the change limits the size of the use. So it has to be less than 2,500 square feet in C1 and C2, less than 5,000 on the ground floor in C4 through C6, and less than 10,000 on upper floors. But there is no limit to multiple establishments on a block. So if this question is reference
Exactly.
to like, what happens to, you know, the commercial vitality of the street if like 6 of these locate on a particular block? Well, there's nothing that prevents that, right? There is no limitation on density. It's just size of establishments, right? And so that could be a problem if these tend to cluster and locate in a particular area for the non-micro distribution centers on the same block or nearby.
No, Brian?
Is there any evidence that this is something that happens in the kind of commercial districts that we have? Like, I mean, we have these big avenues with, you know, all these different spaces. I guess if one landlord did this, it would be unfavorable. But we're thinking about this in the larger context of like the whole district. Is there any likelihood that this is going to happen, like at multiple spots in the district and become an actual economic problem for us?
I got it. Actually, let's take multiple comments and then maybe George can address. Go ahead.
I mean, I was just gonna respond and say, we have no reason to be sure that it won't. And what makes me think about it is the fact that we now have blocks that have 2 or 3 illegal cannabis shops that have filled in empty spaces operating in competition right next to each other.
And this is a very common phenomenon in retail, where you have one pizza shop that opens, and then you have another one that opens up across the street, another one next door, and they create some kind of a synergy, and this I could see happening here with the delivery services. You have the deliveristas all being there, who work for several of these outfits in neighboring locations.
But just to add on to the point I was making earlier, like we have that already. We have blocks where it just has laundromat, nail salon, you know, stuff like that. We have blocks where there's just pizza places. We have blocks where there's monotony. We can't really bring an example in here where the community has come to us and said, hey, we have a real problem here. So do we have any information that indicates that if this happened, it would be a real problem for us?
I mean, all the stores going dark,
They're not dark.
but not lively retail street activity.
Well, it's not the ideal retail thing for everybody. It's not one of those L'Occitane stores selling, you know, perfume and bath bombs and stuff like that. So, but yeah.
I'm just, and at this particular point in time, I think it's probably better to have the space occupied than not. So I actually would vote in favor. We may want some kinds of additional restrictions, but I think at this point, we should support utilizing any retail space we have.
So to that point, I think micro distribution hub facilities are a much needed use for us, given how messy the whole delivery issue is. The fact that we're using the zoning as a tool, which is very heavy-handed and allows for these issues of really just posing major challenges to small businesses. I wonder if we should do unfavorable, conditional on restricting to a certain size, maybe larger sizes, which are not small businesses. So not every corner is gonna have an Amazon.
Like size or
Yeah, 'cause
quantity in
size is
a geographic area?
Right, but then if we reject the smaller size and say only large size over a certain number, so not the 2.5 square feet.
I think this gets to the formula business zoning that I've advocated for in the past. If you end up having these guys, you got Walmart, you have Amazon, you have Target, all set up on the same block or in multiple blocks, you're going to have this threat. And the problem is that it makes the leases for the small guys, for the guys that own the bodegas or the pizzeria or whatever, they see the landlords see the tenants in these multi-billion-dollar corporations, and they say, hey, you know what? I'd rather have that because I get a guarantee from Target or Walmart or Amazon. Whereas, Felipe here, who owns the bodega on the corner, is basically stuck with his business. So, I've long advocated that we engage in some kind of formula business in Manhattan, formula business zoning, and we have not done so far. But I think in this instance, we should probably do, if we do this at all, it should be conditional approval based on a limitation with no more than one such location every whatever, 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet, whatever.
Noted.
I just want to note that the sizes that they're saying in terms of square footage are actually pretty small for a store.
I know.
So
I know.
They're not large spaces, but I think we talked about and I think if we vote for conditional what was it?
Conditional unfavorable.
Conditional unfavorable, we also had some concerns about street use that we wanted to add as well. So can we vote on conditional unfavorable?
But Victoria, go ahead before we do.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and I mentioned this before in another meeting. Like, what if, I don't know how we can do this. These kinds of establishment have a double use. Like in the back, there is the dark store, in the front, there is a use that can help the neighborhood to revitalize. So there is no that issue that Jim is concerned about, that the stores will be rent to them versus the local person.
And George James did point out that they can have multiple uses in the one shop, that's absolutely allowed.
Right.
As part of this.
Yeah, follow
up. Just an illustration of, I think the size that we're talking about is what's currently being used by businesses such as Gorillas and GoPuff, if any of you are familiar with them.
Right, yeah. Actually, before we move to vote, George, can you just also comment on anything you heard, whether there's anything you said that's factually not correct? And there's a question online as well about how will this affect the rents for local businesses?
Well, the only thing I will add to the discussion is, have we seen any evidence? I will say that there hasn't been very much time to see evidence. So the Department of Buildings allowed these uses through a building bulletin, and nominally they need to be open to the public to qualify as a retail use, and then a large portion of them can be used for storage. And so they've been allowing them since 2022, so for the past year, under that kind of formula. So we don't know if they cluster or not. But I will say is that because they're doing local deliveries, there will be some incentive to spread them out, because you want one here, you want one there, so you cover different neighborhoods, I guess is what I'm but actually I don't know that. I'm speculating because there is not evidence on whether these uses cluster.
Right, especially in high density areas, like Midtown Manhattan, they're seeing like 3 million packages within a couple months period.
But if you have one for Target and you have one for Walmart and you have one for Amazon,
Fair.
then you're talking about the cluster that you're talking about,
Fair.
that you warned about. So,
Okay, so can we make an unfavorable conditional vote that requests additional guardrails to protect local businesses in the district?
I second.
All right,
So raise your hand if you're in favor of that. It passes.
Okay, next. So I combined 14 and 15, which are the new CPC authorizations. So currently the way it works is that a commercial use cannot locate in a residential district unless there's a zoning change. The idea here with these new authorizations is that we'll allow for stores, other commercial uses, even production uses in two situations. One, if you're on a corner lot and the use is less than 2,500 square feet, you could do an authorization. Now, I should say what is an authorization, just so everybody understands. It is a non-ULURP action to change the use on an area. And so that means the city council has no say in it. The community board does get the application and you are able to comment on it, but the CPC will make this decision without holding a public hearing. So they do not hold a public hearing, but they will listen to you. All right, so you can get the authorization for the 2,500 square foot or less. So a small corner store, basically, or 15,000 square feet for large scale development.
That's crazy.
So where might this happen? I just picked out a place. This is Kips Bay condominium, where it has a commercial building over here and then the commercial stops, and this is a residential building. If somebody wanted to have, extend the commercial further and redo the front here, this would be a way to do that without going through ULURP, without getting a zoning change. You just get a CPC authorization. It's a much easier application process. And you could fill in a commercial space here, which is not currently permitted, up to 15,000 square feet.
I have a question. So George, I had a question in the city planning's various materials. They actually referenced community board approvals, not just the CPC authorization process, but an actual approval, not advisory kind of comment period from a community board. Can you expand a little bit upon why there's a little bit of a disconnect here between the authorization process and their use of approval?
Well, I mean, they shouldn't have been using that word approval. I mean, authorizations have been around a long time. And the way they work, and they're not proposing to change how they work, but CPC authorizations, they go to the community board, they get your comment, and then they will make their decision. Now, they may be saying that, these are relatively small and very local decisions. They may actually consider your decisions more strongly because, most of the commissioners aren't from your district and most of them aren't from Manhattan. And so it makes more sense to have the, stronger weight to the community board's opinion on these very, very local decisions. But it's still the same process of an authorization is, it takes the community board's opinion under advisement. It's not an approval. Got it.
All right, can I just ask about one scenario? In this case, if this is being commercial allowed in residential districts, does that mean that a ground floor residential on a corner can opt to flip that and make it a commercial, make it just a store?
In theory, yes. I mean, you'd have to get building department approval. It's not always easy to just change the use, but yes, you can, in theory, do that if you can get the other approvals necessary.
Got it. And do you think this is significant that it basically puts strain on the already limited residential stock, or I understand?
Well, okay, so that's a good question because the floor area does come out of. This is not a waiver of floor area. This is just use. So you still have the same amount of floor area. which you can allocate in a residential district to either residential uses or community facility uses. This adds commercial uses as a competing use. And so, yes, so that means if you have this, by definition, you would not be able to have as much residential floor area on the lot. However, it's also not a lot of floor area we're talking about.
Right, and only corner as well, so it's not massive.
Well,
I know
the corner is for the 2,500 square feet. For the 15,000 square feet for the larger scale developments, it does not have to be on the corner.
Noted. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Yeah.
Second it.
I would feel better if it was just not a straight CPC authorization and there was some committee board rule process in terms of especially topic 15, not the corners, but the other one. That's my concern.
The large scale development with 15,000 feet.
Development being, yeah.
Conditional approval?
Okay, should we separate the two just for the sake of this? Vote on 15 and 16. So 15, that's the campus commercial. Are we voting conditionally?
Just back up a little bit. The 15,000, as I understand from George memo, this would only be on large residential developments such as Stuyvesant Town or
Yes.
Phipps Houses or someplace like that. Is that correct? I don't really.
That is correct. Yeah. I think there's a size. I think it's over 1.5 acres or something like that. It's intended for big residential campuses like the Kips Bay condominium site.
Yeah, that's why I didn't have any objection.
Okay, one more comment from Larry.
Right. Looking at that Kips Bay photograph there, makes me wonder whether that setback from the commercial stores is something that was required by the zoning initially when the campus was approved, and maybe that's part of an agreement with the Public Development Corporation, very, very specific and not related to zoning. So I think we have got to be careful not to
there were several
mess things up.
That development,
to mess things up by providing a way of avoiding an agreement that provided certain bonus areas.
I would support a condition that existing agreements would have to be honored.
Yeah, I would say that's how we handle that.
But is that something that zoning can enforce?
So typically, if I may, if you have like some sort of contractual arrangement, a lease or some sort of agreement, that supersedes zoning, right? So that always supersedes zoning. So just because you can do it under zoning doesn't mean you're legally allowed to do it with other impairments or agreements on your site.
Well, then we should make reference to that in any case.
Well, then
Can
it
we
becomes
go
more of
back
an
to
enforcement
voting
issue.
Yeah.
on the 15 separately from 16, because
Yeah.
so we're talking about, one is the large scale development, 15,000 square feet. We have conditional.
Right, Sandra, that was the.
Yes,
Yeah, I mean,
commercial.
so again, in the materials that city planning released, they actually say community board approval. They use the language of approval, not, advisory, and George is right, the authorization process does not actually have an approval of a community board. It's just we meet with the commissioner and say, we think it's a bad idea, and they go, okay, thanks, noted, and move on. And that's their process right now. And I don't think that's adequate for this.
Okay, so we asked for community board review.
Approval, not just, so.
Board approval.
Yeah, I think there needs to be an actual approval for this, because there's a significant impact for several large developments in our district.
So that's objection or conditional objection?
That's conditional.
Conditional
unfavorable.
Unfavorable.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so conditional
But
unfavorable.
only as respects the 15,000 feet, right?
Yes.
Or are you
Yeah.
talking the 2,500 as well?
I'm talking only to topic 15, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay. So can we vote on that one?
Second.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor, sorry, just,
all right, by raise a hand motion.
This is 16, right?
This is
So
15.
topic
15,
15.
it's topic 15.
Topic 15.
Conditional unfavorable on topic 15, and that passes.
okay, 16,
And that's the corner stores.
no comment, no,
There are no comments, all right,
Motion. Seconded.
Motion what?
all right, by support,
Yeah.
favorable,
So favorable.
favorable,
favorable,
all right, by show of hands,
we're never favorable.
all right, unanimous.
Yep, so favorable. 16.
What are we voting on? The 2,500?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so
The corner store.
Favorable for topic 16.
Okay,
okay. Back to you,
Okay,
George.
so,
Is-
all right, so let me just say that those were the questions that you asked me to go over today. I didn't prepare something exhaustive for all 18 of them. We can go over them informally. I mean, the only thing I had was a final observation that the text was surprisingly hostile to housing, not in a major way, but little ways that, you know, even things that we haven't talked about, like the urban design requirements actually prohibit new ground floor dwellings in all community Ward 6 commercial streets. There can't have ground floor commercial or ground floor units anymore. And the home occupations could also be considered to be hostile to housing because it could encourage people to combine units to be used for their business because there's no longer a 500 square foot size limitation on it. So I thought like a lot of your comments, you know, were essentially concerned about housing, and there's nothing in here that addresses housing at all. And when asked, the Department of City Planning said, "Wait for housing opportunity. We'll address it all there. Don't worry about it here." And you know, that may be true. I don't know the answer to that, but I just wanted to build on a theme that you had in your comments.
Noted. I don't see any other comments we had on the others, but on the home occupation, that's amendment number 11. I wonder if we want to vote on separately, knowing that the 500 square foot limit is removed. And the combined units for commercial use are a lot more profitable than 2 units for folks to live in. So that's a major incentive to flip them like that.
And when you combine that with the idea that you can now have up to 3 outside employees. So right now you can only have 1 outside employee. You end up with 3 outside employees. You need more space for them. And you can give up your office outside your home.
Right. In a time that we already have an excess amount of office space that we don't know what to do with.
it also changes the nature of some of our residential buildings.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot more public coming in and, you know, that's always a concern. And which number was this, George? Which?
It's 11.
Oh, goodness.
11.
So can we vote on?
The unconditional favorable would be, unconditional unfavorable would be requesting that that they don't remove the 500 square foot limit. As in, don't make it, you know, more appealing for homeowners to do that.
Yeah.
And your comment?
You know, it's kind of a general point about the whole thing, and it's kind of semantic, but I don't know, Brendan, if you can tell me, but I feel like 8 of the 10 things, like it's all conditional unfavorable, like there's so much in it. And I'm not sure, semantically, a lot of them wouldn't send the same, I'm not quite sure how to say this, but we're being very negative. And I think a lot of the things, if we say, hey, we're okay with this with these conditions, so you make it a conditional approval, which is the same thing, right? It's like, we approve it with these conditions. It's almost the same as saying, we don't approve it unless you say this. But it makes us look more like, sure, we're with the game and we're worth it. So I just, as an observer, and an editor.
Okay.
Conditional favorable with removing the 500 square foot restrictions. Okay.
All right.
You're talking about are we talking about the home occupations?
That's
Yes.
right.
So conditional. Raise your hands if you're in favor. Okay.
Yep, it passes.
Passes. And
Great.
I think that's.
So that might be it for us. Just as a reminder, the others, number one, reactive storefronts, everything I'm gonna list now is support from us.
Majed, just
Yes.
to interrupt, would you like me to share?
Oh, yes, please. Yeah. You have access to the document.
Yes. Just a moment.
Right, so as shown on the screen. Okay, if you can scroll down a little bit, all right, reactive, these are the things that I'm assuming we're all in favor of. Reactive storefronts, that's based on the fact we didn't have questions. Simple types, small scale production, loading docks, use terms, nightlife, amusement, now that casino has been removed, streetscape, auto repair, corner store, which we just voted on, better waiver process, and new lifestyle district.
Okay.
The conditional has two, that's number 7 and number 11 that we just voted on. And the conditional unfavorable has all the rest. 5, 8, 14, and 15.
That's not too bad.
Yay.
We did. All right.
We vote on the
But
resolution.
there needs to be a motion in a second.
Yeah, I have to like, vote.
I'll second that we approve the resolution as presented.
The most important part.
Okay,
All right.
all right. Roll call, please.
Roll call, please. Yes.
Okay, so when I call your name, please say whether you're in favor, opposed, abstain, or abstain for cause. Majed Abdul Samad.
In favor.
Victoria Benatar.
In favor.
Jim Collins.
Favor.
John DeRico.
In favor.
Sandy McKee.
In favor.
Rich Smith.
In favor.
Larry Shire.
In favor.
Sandra Sharad.
In favor.
Letty Simon.
In favor?
Susan Steinberg.
In favor.
Gabe Terza.
In favor.
Brian Van
In
Nieuwenhoven.
favor.
Okay, with all 12 committee members in favor, this resolution passes.
Awesome. Thank you very much. With that, last item on the agenda, presentation on the restroom construction for Murphy Brothers Playground. DCP is on. Thank you so much, George. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Thanks, George. Good memo.
This
A little long.
Hi, everyone. Should I share my presentation or is it gonna be put on the screen for me?
Whichever you prefer.
Either way I can do, like if you put it on the screen, I'll just say next slide if I need it to change.
Actually, why don't you go ahead and share, and that will be faster. You can control the pace, and feel free to go at the speed you feel comfortable with.
That's
Sure.
fast.
Actually.
You gotta go. This is a bathroom.
So is my screen showing the presentation title page?
No.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Okay,
Click on share screen.
yeah.
And then select the actual, like, the
Maybe Brandon
PowerPoint,
should
the
do it.
PDF, and hit OK.
Good now?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Thank
excellent,
you.
okay. Okay, good evening, everyone. Thanks for taking this opportunity to present, letting me have this opportunity to present an upcoming DDC project, the Murphy Brothers Public Restroom Building. My name is Helen, and I am the project manager for this project. I work in the design build unit at the New York City Department of Design and Construction. So all the projects in my unit's portfolios use the design build construction delivery method. And so before we dive into this project, I'm gonna zoom out a little and speak about the design build delivery method as we're using this for the restrooms, and it does differ a bit from our standard approach. So very simplified overview, design build encourages collaboration, coordination, and then paired with best practices established across the country, projects can be delivered faster, more efficiently, and more cost effectively. And so what is design build? To start, if you look at the graphics to the lower right, that's a diagram of the design bid build structure, and that's the very traditional construction delivery method, and it involves 3 separate parties: the owner, a designer, a contractor. In this model, the owner, the city, is managing 2 separate contracts, one with the designer and then one separately with the contractor. Whereas in the design build process shown on the left, there are only 2 key parties, the owner and the design builder, because at this point, the designer and contractor have formed a team to both design and construct the project together. And the benefits of this approach are multifold, including lower unit costs, lower cost growth, less schedule growth, faster construction, and faster delivery speed. And really, this just means the project takes less time and less money. And this is because the design build team works together collaboratively from start to finish. And usually if an issue arises, the owner manages only one contract, so there's a single point of responsibility. And so all of these advantages make the design build process the fastest growing construction delivery method in the industry, and DDC has been growing its use in the city's portfolio for their projects as well. So back to our project. An update on the Murphy Brothers Playground Restroom Building. The Murphy Brothers Restroom is a park-sponsored project, and it's being bundled together actually with 5 other parks restroom buildings into one project and being procured through the design build method. This project was selected as a great candidate for design build because we can leverage efficiency and scale by having one team design all the restrooms, which allow for consistency and standardization of designs across all the buildings. And then the same team would begin construction across all the different sites. And because of these efficiencies, we expect the Murphy Brothers restroom building to actually be less costly and faster than our original estimates. So additionally, the Murphy Brothers restrooms will be sited in the same location, which was previously proposed to the board during conceptual design. And that was, I think, in a presentation back in 2019. This is that same slide, actually. So where there's a little label that says building pad for future public restroom building, that is where the restroom building will be located. And then in terms of timeline, the project schedule is split into 2 parts: the pre-award, which occurs before we award the project to a design builder, and the post-award, which is when we have contracted with the design build team. And we're currently in the pre-award phase. So if you look at the overall schedule, we are right here where the CB6 Land Use Committee is. And so we're working on scoping, regulatory approvals, and community engagement right now. We expect to select the design builder in the winter of 2024. And that's when NTP will be. And we hope to have construction completed by the winter of 2025. And once we have a design builder on board and near the end of the design phase, our team will return to present to the full board for community support. And so actually we're here today because the city made a commitment to this community to provide a restroom. And we'd like to have this project completed as soon as possible. This site is actually located still in the flood zone until the East Side Coastal Resiliency Project is completed, the flood wall system. It's completed in 2026 and then certified in 2027. And so in order to meet the goal of having this project being complete by end of 2025, we actually need to request a waiver of flood requirements from the Department of Buildings and Board of Standards and Appeals. And so basically, as part of the Board of Standards and Appeals application, we need documented support from the community board that they still support this project and would like the restroom built. So we just need a letter formalizing that. And pretty much the end of my presentation. These are typical contacts if you would like to reach out to DDC with questions, and I can answer any questions there are.
Thank you, Ellen.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Helen. I'm just curious, and this is due to my own ignorance, is this a standard timeline to build a restroom? It takes 2 years to build a restroom?
This is actually a faster timeline than what is typical.
You have to design it.
Hopefully you don't have to go.
Yeah,
I'm
sorry.
I'm curious about that myself. Why does it take, why can't we start working on this like now? We have to wait until December of 24 to even get this thing to a bid process?
So actually the playground is currently being constructed, and so the playground has to be constructed and the site prepped for our restroom before we can start our construction, which is why 2024 is our start date for design.
Got it. Thank you. Larry, that's it.
Right, well, you have an opportunity here, as you're providing the specifications for the design build to, create, anti-vandalism, provisions, as well as, requiring certain things which will make the facility easy to keep clean. How do you usually handle that aspect?
So actually, parks, because they're standardizing all these restrooms, their major goals, which there are pretty much 5 of them. Durability is a key factor. Maintenance, operations are always the top goal for them for the public restrooms. And they have preliminarily selected very easy to maintain, easy to clean, and easy long life, essentially, specifications for their toilet facilities.
Can we just go back? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
When is the park expected to be completed?
The park is expected to be completed, I think, end of 2024.
Okay. So why can't we bid in anticipation of that date? Why are we waiting until it's completed before we start bidding?
So there are a number. So
Can you
other
go back to that other chart? I just want to make sure I've got the timelines right.
I don't know how to back up on my slides here. Let me just stop sharing and then do it again.
So just the left arrow.
Yeah, it's not working for me.
Or up.
Oh, yes. Oh, okay. Thank you.
There we go. Okay. So, yeah, no, one right, go to the right one.
One down.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you're saying the park's going to be done in the winter of 2024.
Yeah. So we actually start design before we actually, so the design build process.
Fine. All right.
Yeah.
That's fine. All right. I must have messed up your timeline.
Yeah, it's actually typically the design doesn't start until there is a designer on board, but with the design build process, we actually have 3 different proposers who all start schematic design, and we select the best design out of the 3, which is why the MTP is actually pretty much at 100% SD level when we have the official design builder on board.
So we already you already have a schematic design selected?
So at this point, we're just over here. We actually haven't selected a design builder yet. We're in our scoping phase where we're putting the dots.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I'm just wondering why we can't go a little faster and take the design and development back prior to winter of 2024 and the construction documents, and then start construction in winter of 2024 when the park is installed. The only thing that you're waiting for in terms of hard costs is the completion of the park. So that's the only thing that should hold that up is construction.
So the other issue is actually what I came here for. It's the Board of Standards and Appeals. We can't actually construct this building as is without doing the appeals process right now because it's in the flood zone, and that appeals process unfortunately can take 6 months, which is where you see this big gap. Even if we start now, which we're hoping to do right now to put in the application now, it takes up to 6 months for that application to be approved.
Only there was a resolution.
Noted. Thank you, Helen. Go ahead, Sandy.
I make a motion that we support this action to the BSA, construction without the requirements for the flood zone.
And with Happily success.
Second.
Okay, when I call you can see whether you are in favor, oppose, abstain, or abstain for cause. Okay, Majid Abdul-Samad.
In favor.
No, issues. Victoria Benatar.
In favor.
Jim Collins.
In favor.
John DeRico.
Favor, for the fastest bathroom project I've ever seen.
Sandy McKee.
Just keep in mind, this is for little tiny humans, so make sure you put the urinals in the toilets very low.
Can we please keep moving?
Rich Mintz.
In favor.
Larry Shire.
In favor.
Sandra Sharad.
In favor.
Betty Simon.
In favor.
Susan Steinberg.
In favor.
Gabe Terzo.
In favor.
Brian Van Nieuwenhoven.
In favor.
With all 12 committee members in favor, this resolution passes, and
Awesome.
we will write it.
Thank you. We
Awesome.
need someone to write this resolution. Any volunteers?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Gabe and Jim interjected at the same time.
All right. Go ahead, Jim, all yours. Thank you so much for volunteering. All right, with that.
Is it it's a resolution and a letter, or no? Helen?
Well,
Ms. Cole?
It's a letter of support.
yeah, we can't write letters, right?
So
The-
resolution is
The
on.
chair, the
Okay.
chair of the board writes
A
a letter based on a resolution that we passed, Jim. So we have to first pass a resolution.
To BSA.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you for writing that.
And they'll be satisfied with that, Ms. Cole?
No,
Yeah,
she
it-
write a
I
letter.
think to just
after the
initiate.
resolution.
Jim, you just have to worry about the resolution.
Just
We'll
write the
take care of the
resolution.
rest
Alright.
after.
Awesome. All right, feel free to stop sharing. Chair's report. I'm waiving my report for this one. Thank you all for meeting at an earlier time. We are finishing before 9. All the new business. Anyone has all new business to share? Seeing none. Thank
Motion
you
to
all.
adjourn.
Second.
All right,
Thank you, Helen.
perfect.
Thank you, Helen.
Great holiday,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you, Joseph, for staying
Thank you,
around.
everyone.
Happy holidays.
Yes.
Happy holidays.